Hey, welcome to Late Night with Larry. I'm your host, Larry D. I'm here with my co-host, Vince. Give him a shout out, Vince.
Hey, what's up? Welcome back.
Hey, there you go. And tonight, we're going to keep it on the Sasquatching subject. We were just going to talk tonight about the Big Thicket, which we've heard a lot of people talk about, and it's down in Texas, close to Arkansas, I guess we would say East Texas area.
East Texas.
East by God, Texas. So, like I was talking with my brother Vince earlier, and the rumor is, now we've never been down there, but the rumor is that the Squatches down in East Texas are more aggressive than the Squatches up in the Northwest, up in the Midwest. It seems like if you hear about aggressive Squatches, it's mostly in the Big Thicket.
Yes. Now, we've heard a lot of Sasquatch encounters from all over the country. You know, there's plenty of stories out there. You could Google it, go to YouTube, other iPod or podcasts, and the majority of them, the Sasquatch, they don't want to be messed with. They just turn and leave, or in some instances they'll actually escort you out of their territory, and usually that's when there's young around. But what makes the Big Thicket different to you? What do you think?
Well, what makes it different to me is from the stories I've heard. Many people have went in there and not looking for Sasquatch, but just hiking, camping, and they go into remote areas and they never come back out. They don't come out. They're missing. They're what's called David Pilates, who wrote the book. I do believe David Pilates. Don't quote me. I could be wrong. But he wrote the book 411, which talks about all the Squatches in the thicket and how people are missing.
Yeah.
And many people are missing. Now, they report it as maybe the hiker got lost or whatnot. But from what I've read and some of the stories that I've seen on the internet and through other, like you said, podcasts and hearing personal interviews from people, they've went in and they've found the people's clothes. They've found shoes up in trees, pants. And what animal's going to put your shoes up in a tree?
How does
your
it
pants
get there?
Up in a tree? Right. And my thing is, why are the clothes off anyway with no body around?
Right. That's a strange one. You know, I don't know a whole lot about the Big Thicket. You know, I have heard some stories, but I don't really understand what makes them more aggressive down there. Now, I have heard about missing people, like in our national parks.
Right.
Now, I saw a special on it, and you know, a lot of people think that maybe it's aggressive Sasquatch,
right.
But there's no proof. But it's just alarming, the number of missing that go unreported, really.
Right. And my thing is, if you come up missing and let's say it's a wild animal attack, they're going to find your carcass because the animal's not going to consume the whole body.
Right.
They're going to find pieces of you there, so they could rule that. But in these instances, the people are just missing and they have no trace. They are gone.
Like they vanished.
Absolutely.
Right out of their clothes.
So to say, yes.
Yeah.
And I too wonder what makes the Squatches in that area much more violent. Now, some of the researchers that have went into this area have stated that, you know, they are aggressive. They let you know that they're there. They let you know they don't want you there. And they do that by throwing rocks at you, throwing lumber at you, tree parts, and aggressively growling.
Yeah. And
I don't know about you, Vince, but if they were that aggressive toward me, I'd get the fuck out of there.
Right. You know, I'd take the warning. I'd get the hell out of there. And I don't know, some people, it's like the scary movie. You know it's a bad situation, but they go into it anyway.
They do. And there's more than one, I want to say, Squatcher down in the Texas area that says, come on down, we'll take you into the Big Thicket and show you that they're real. I don't know if I'd want to do that. No, if what I read about it is true, I don't know, because you stand a chance of not coming out.
Yeah.
And if one of those beasts you encounter and it comes up to you, you're talking 6, 7, 800-pound beast that's capable of ripping you in half.
Yeah, and even if you're in a vehicle, man, they'll just pull you right through that door.
They'll pull the door off,
Right.
really. And yeah, so that makes me think, is it the environment? Have people just messed with them too much? Or as Texas grows, are we encroaching on their land too much where they say enough's enough?
Right, and that's what I was thinking. Maybe we're encroaching on both sides, and their habitat, maybe they're cut off. Maybe there's not a whole lot of migration trails,
Right.
you know, where they follow the game because of the settlements and stuff.
Right.
So they're in there, and their land has shrunk, so they just want to fight to keep what they have, you know.
Well, I mean, and that's a rational explanation because that's what anybody does. When someone else comes and tries to take your land,
Right.
you're going to fight for it. You're going to be like, no, this belongs to me.
Right, because if you look at all the other areas where the Bigfoot or Sasquatch have been sighted or whatever, some kind of interactions, there's usually maybe like connection, like the mountain range will go all the way to Canada, or
Right.
you know, they'll have they could flee and get away if they want.
Right.
Where over there, maybe they feel they're backed into a corner.
Yeah, that could be so, and that is a good explanation. And that brings me to question two. You know, they're in the Big Thicket, but do they migrate out of there? Because I mean, we've heard that they follow game trails and they migrate.
Right, and that's my point. Maybe they can no longer migrate out of there.
Okay, well, that would make sense to me because it's like you cut me off, so we got to stand our ground.
Right.
But it is interesting to see the number of people that have went missing in the Big Thicket and no explanation for them. Now, you know, I'm not going to get into saying, well, they were abducted by aliens or they were just a lost hiker. Well, if that's the case, you know, they'd be found. And like I said, they find clothing items, but they don't find no body.
Right. And, you know, some of them could be lost hikers because, you know, once you get into the forest, you know as much as I do how easy it is to get turned around. So they could be lost and trying to find their way out, but just getting more lost.
They could, but takes me back to wonder when they do find clothing items
Right.
and no body, what happened?
Yeah, yep.
What happened? And people seem to think, people want to cry out that we know this is from aggressive Squatches down there that are going to kill you if you encroach too much. But then again, we hear about search teams that the U.S. military supposedly has, that if this type of activity happens, they go in and they hunt them down.
Right, they eradicate the problem.
Right. So there would be a lot of eradication going on down there.
Right, and yeah, because you and I have both heard, I can't remember who it was. It was an ex-military. It was an older guy, I think.
Right.
And he finally told the story about when they went in and hunted a clan because they started hurting the people.
That's right. Oh, are you talking about the story about the guy on his deathbed?
No. There was another one. Just he was like a special forces guy. They went in and they even told him, if one pops in front of you, you start shooting, we can't help you. You're on your own.
Oh, that's right. I remember that. Yep. And there you go again. So do they go in and eradicate them when things like this happen? I suppose first they'd have to prove that it was a Squatch.
Right.
And right now they can't. They find clothing items and they're like, well, we really don't know.
You can't prove it if there's no evidence.
Now, I seen a video. I don't know if you've seen this video on YouTube. And I think the tourists, they were tourists in one of the national forests. They were filming. And as they were filming, I believe they were speaking Japanese.
Okay.
And it shows, it's clear. Now, I don't know if this is just like a setup or whatnot, but it shows like an older Squatch, and it had kind of like a hunchback. And I suppose it came toward and it attacked them because their phone just shows them running, and they never found them, but they found the phone is supposedly the story, and that's why we have that video.
Wow. Yeah, I haven't seen that one. I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it. But that I need to watch it because that's interesting.
It's a trip, and it looks like it's an older Squatch. It's not bulky and muscular like they say the younger ones are.
Right.
It's skinny, like has like a hunchback, and you could tell this thing could be on its last leg. But it was aggressive.
Right, and well, the thing is, I believe they're like humans. They come in different shapes and forms.
I
like, remember the video where they're down on that? I guess it's almost like an experimental place where they have the barn and the cornfield. It's called the fence.
Oh
climber.
yeah, the fence hopper. Yeah,
the fence hopper. Yeah, that one was it was tall, but it was lean and quick.
You're right.
Now you see the one like on the Patterson Gimlin film. It's a female, but it's more bulky.
Bulky. That one had power. That one would rip you apart.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to tangle with that one.
Yeah, and back to not to get off the Big Thicket, but that new Sasquatch show, the Destination Bigfoot, is that what it is? Or
Expedition
Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Now they got that thermal hit, and they did the like stick figure thing trying to map out the body.
Right.
Now if it actually was a Bigfoot, that thing was big and bulky. That would be like the Patterson Gimlin one.
And here's the thing: didn't they have a primatologist that said, after he analyzed it, said, "I see the arm swinging,
Yes.
the bulk of it." Says you got a primate who's out of its place.
Yeah, he
and
said
a big one.
He said you have a great ape that's far away from its natural home.
Right, and you got a primatologist saying this. So you people that want proof and depend on science, there you go.
Right.
Is he a liar?
Yeah, I don't think he's a liar, but people could make the argument either way. But he believes what he saw was a primate.
Well, I'm, and like you said, not to get off the subject, but I'm going to believe him. Look at taking it back to searching for Bigfoot.
Finding Bigfoot.
Finding Bigfoot. I always say searching, but finding Bigfoot. When they did the thermal of the one up in the Jemez, we don't know what that one, but that was a great thermal. And whatever was walking through those woods late at night, it was huge.
Yeah, it was.
And so, was it a Squatch? We'll never know. They're so elusive. I mean, people see them. Do we have proof? Not definitive, other than thousands of eyewitnesses.
Right. Now, there's a lot of video out there now, a lot of pictures, but, you know, you have to take some of it with a grain of salt. You could almost kind of pick out the hoaxes. And some hoaxes are so blatant, you're like, really, dude?
Yeah, some of them you're like, no, this is
But some of them make you think. You watch it a few times and you think, hey, there could be something there.
Right, okay. Let's take it back to, we both have seen the video of, who's the man that recently died? That he?
Is it a Freeman? Paul
Freeman. Paul Freeman. Now, his video, when he's looking at prints, and then he stumbles across one, that's authentic.
That's some good footage.
Yeah, I don't care what anyone says, that's authentic. And seeing that tells me that these creatures are real. Those that say, oh, it's just bullshit and it's stories made up.
Right.
I'm like, no, I don't think so. And we take it back to our own experiences.
Yes.
So we know they exist. We've heard them. Haven't smelled them, haven't been that close to them, but we've definitely heard them and we know they're around. Now, we were on the subject of the Big Thicket and how they're aggressive down there.
Yes.
So aggressive, and I don't know why. But then we read about stories in the Northwest, a particular story where there was a miner, and he was up in the Northwest, not even the Northwest. I believe it was like in the Colorado Rockies. He was mining for gold. While he got injured, got sick, and the story goes that he supposedly was having visions, thinking, am I seeing what I'm seeing? But there was a Squatch on the ridge above him that would throw rocks at him, and he seen it, and he said he finally caught fever and passed out. And when he came to, the Squatch had carried him to safety, basically went and got him food from the stream, fish.
Yeah.
He basically nourished him and carried him all the way back, miles. He carried him, and he put him at the base of there was supposedly a couple that were camping in a bus
Yeah.
in the mountains, and the Squatch rattled the bus. They came out and they found this guy. Have you ever heard of that?
I have, but yeah, how do you explain that?
That's what I'm saying. We go from aggressive Squatches that are going to rip you apart and possibly just kill you to stories of a Squatch that had compassion for maybe a human because they're like, you look like me.
Right. Now, there's a couple of theories that I've heard. Now, of course, they say they're just like people. Everyone has different personalities. But could like a whole clan of them be aggressive, have the same kind of mindset? But which brings me back to the Native American stories that we heard about the different clans, the colored ones. Like the brown are pretty passive, as where the red ones are aggressive.
So, well, then that leads me to believe that maybe they're the red ones down in the Big Thicket.
That's possible.
Maybe that's their breeding ground. And yeah, right. We went, not too long ago, we went to, what was it? The Squatch.
In Hamish Springs?
Yeah, the Hamish Springs little Squatch festival.
Yeah.
Well, there was a story told to us, and it was told to them supposedly by a native woman who explained she was an old woman because she was alive during the time, the early, I guess, 1900s when the tribes were getting resettled and the government was hunting the tribes down.
They were forcing them on the reservations.
Right, they were forcing, and some of the men left so that they could fight. And they were up on the Navajo reservation up in the Chusca Mountains.
Yeah, I believe that's where it was.
And a hard winter hit. And when the men finally came back, to make a long story short, they asked them, we thought you guys would all be dead. You had no food, no water. The winter was hard. How did you survive? And she said that the Squatches would lay deer carcasses there for them to pick up so that they could survive. So, you see where I'm going?
Yeah. Now, there's the compassionate ones right there again.
Right.
Now, in the Big Thicket, maybe they're not really in tune to nature or the Sasquatch or living in harmony.
Maybe.
The people I'm talking. And whereas like in the Chusca Mountains, the Native Americans have lived side by side with them since the beginning of time, their stories.
Right. That's a good point, because all the stories from the natives and anyone who was raised with native relatives, and they talk about seeing a Squatch, the elders tell them they're our brothers. When you see one, just leave it, let it.
Respect it.
Let it go its way, you go your way.
Yeah.
And that could be so.
Yeah.
And not to sound racial or anything, but yeah, we got the Caucasian population down in Texas who came in and not only ravaged the natives,
but they're also a bunch of hunters too down there.
There you go. So
maybe they're over hunting.
Well, that's true too. And let's take it back respectfully, because it's proven the natives only hunted what they needed.
Right.
And a creature like Sasquatch out in the wilderness, they're going to see that and they're going to respect that.
Right. But when you come and you take and take and take, they're going to say, "Whoa!"
Like Buffalo Bill.
Right. Well, is that the one that kept the people in the hole, or that's a different?
Oh, that's a different Buffalo Bill.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the one where Clarice was asked if the lambs are still crying.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, and it's and I could see an intelligent creature like Squatch seeing things like that. Of course, that may upset him, because not only are you just killing to kill, I mean, that upsets anyone that wants to live in harmony with nature.
Right.
Because
and not only that, you're cutting their food supply short also.
That's a big part of it. It's like you're taking what we need.
Right.
And you're right, that could be happening, because they hunt a lot down there.
Right.
And they hunt for sport.
And that there's a lot of sport hunting down there.
And maybe I could see that setting them off, because they're like, you don't even need it.
Right.
Yeah.
You'll take the skin and leave the carcass.
Right. And I'm so fascinated with the subject of Sasquatch. I mean,
we both are. It's kind of it drives us. It's weird.
It does. And for you listeners out there, I'm gonna say, unless you've heard a scream in the forest that you can't explain, and you've heard singers, you've heard people screaming, you've heard children screaming, you've even heard different wild animals screaming if you've been in the forest. But those certain screams let you know that there's something out there that I can't explain.
Right.
And that drives me. And it may be curiosity kills the cat, but I am curious.
It's just strange because it's always piqued our interest, even back in the day, because we've heard stories from our own family members that they're credible. I believe they're credible.
Right.
And
why would they lie? But
once we started going where we go and we've heard what we've heard and seen what we've seen, right. I mean, it's almost like it becomes your passion, almost like an addiction where you just want more proof.
I think what we want is a definitive answer to end our curiosity.
Yes, because in our mind I'm sure they're there. I'm positive.
I have no doubt they're there.
But we just want that one clear visual.
Yes, and you know, you're right. It takes me back to my childhood when they had the series In Search Of, and they did like little episodes, a little skit that they talked about Bigfoot or the Yeti in the Himalayas, and that caught my curiosity from the get-go, thinking,
right,
is this real?
Now, since you went back to your childhood, that when we were young, that was our first Bigfoot experience.
Right, when we went camping.
We went camping. Yeah, there's in the Zuni Mountains, just what is it? Maybe southeast of Gallup.
It's if you go east of Gallup, you're going to drive 12 miles, and then there's a turnoff that says McGaffey, and that's in the Cibola National Forest.
Yes.
And then from there, you drive back maybe 10 miles into the forest.
It's not that far.
But
we used to go camping, and
right.
It's a nice, peaceful. It's not too terribly far from the city, but you are up in the mountains in the forest,
and you are secluded.
Yes, and one time we happened to be camping there, then we started hearing screams.
It was about dawn, and yeah, at first you thought, is someone killing a cow?
Yeah.
But you're right. We heard those screams. And I'll be truthful. After we heard those screams, we used to walk. There's a trail by the campground, and you could hike. It was about 2 miles to the ranger station.
Yes.
I used to get scared to walk. After I heard those screams, I used to get scared. I always wanted like someone to have a gun or something, because walking up there, it was kind of creepy, and I always felt like something's watching me. I didn't feel right when we would go.
Yes, and possibly something was. That's why that day we heard the screams, I remember my dad and our uncles, they grabbed their rifles and they started walking in the forest. Yep. And they screamed again, and they came back. They're like, nope, pack it up, let's go.
And we did. They were like, nah. Yeah, they did grab the rifles, and you're right. They looked and they said, no, it's time to go. Let's pack it up.
Yep.
So maybe they knew something we didn't.
Yeah.
But we did. We packed it up and we got out of Dodge.
Yep.
So the topic, if it interests you and you're listening to this, I'm sure it does, you decide for yourself. Are the ones in the Big Thicket aggressive because people encroach on their land, and the ones up north are free to roam with? And I get it that we do have hunters up there, but you're right. The land is encroached on a lot in Texas because it's a big state, but compared to the Northwest, they got more free land to roam.
Right. And like I said, they might be their migration path may have been cut off, and or severely narrowed.
Right. And you know, there's a lot of deer down there too, so I know they got plenty of food.
Right.
I know they do.
They do, but I mean, if they're stuck in one area, like it'd be like backed into a corner, right?
It'd get frustrating. They probably have cabin fever because it's like you getting locked in your room.
Yeah, because before maybe they migrated up north and back and forth, and now like, whoa, we can't leave.
I could see that. I could see that. But I guess we'll really never know. But I always wondered, ever since I heard the stories about the Big Thicket, and there's a lot out there, many stories, that they're violent like that. And I've heard stories about people encountering them in Kentucky and in Tennessee and the Smoky Mountains and everywhere. But the stories, they're not like the stories of
not like the Big Thicket. No,
for some reason, the ones down there, they're aggressive.
Yeah, we're gonna have to research it more, check the geography, and see. Because like even here in the Jemez, they could get up to the mountains, probably all the way up Colorado, all the way to Canada.
And I think that's what they do. They use that mountain range, and because the game trails, and like where we pick to post up and we camp, there's a game trail right up on that mountain.
And it's the same thing every time we have an experience. I believe they're passing through those game trails when they see us.
Probably.
Because on the ridges, it starts with knocking back and forth. They're like, hey, the idiots are back. Right. They're down there.
They're like, oh, God, here we go again.
Yeah. And that's usually how it starts. And they end up going past us, I believe.
They probably do, but they definitely have let us know we're here.
Yeah.
In case you want to venture past, we're here.
Now they probably do, but a park ranger was asked there, and you know this, if they were there, and they straight up said yes, a brother and sister.
Right.
Now maybe they stay all year round because over here, in November or something, they close it off after the hunting season?
Yeah, no, it's not even. They close it off before. So after Memorial, I'd say late October.
Well, yeah, maybe.
So,
but everything is locked up. You could travel the main roads, of course, because there's residential areas and, just going through to the next city or whatever. But as far as camping, the trails, most of it's locked up.
I'm going to say 90% of it's locked up.
Yeah, so they have the run of the place all winter without having to see a human.
And I don't think hunting is allowed in the Jemez Mountains there.
No? Okay.
No. When I was hunting, it was predominantly like up in the Taos area. There's certain locations to where you draw for a hunt here in New Mexico.
Yeah.
You can't just go hunt anywhere.
Right.
There's certain locations like
when you draw your tag, they'll tell you what
your zone is.
Yes.
That's where you have to hunt. And it was down south, up north. But no, I think the Jemez is off limits. I don't know of anyone going to the Jemez hunting. I'm going to have to find out because that's a good question.
Right. Now, maybe the tribe maybe could hunt there?
Maybe, because they may have rights.
Right.
And that's probably why they do it. The tribe hunts there. But I'll have to research that. But that brings something to my mind. I know we could hunt down toward Reserve.
Yes.
And I'll bet there's Squatches down there.
Well, yeah, you'd think there would be, but now
I don't hear stories.
I don't hear stories from Mount Taylor either.
No.
But now, do you think there's food and water to support a clan?
Yeah. So when I was hunting, let's say down in I would go down to like Reserve, that area, and we would pick the area because the mule deer, what we have in this state, that's one of their migration routes from like down toward Mexico. They come up that way, and they migrate up from there. So, and we always saw mule deer there. So that I wonder, and I've never heard of a Bigfoot story down there.
Yeah, I've never heard one, like I said, in Mount Taylor either. But now, can you get to other mountain ranges from Mount Taylor, or is that pretty much locked off?
No, I think you can from Mount Taylor. I definitely know from down there in Reserve, Quemado area, you could get to different mountain ranges. And that is all nothing but mountain ranges.
Yeah.
So, I could see how.
But it's weird because I work with a lot of hunters. They hunt in Taylor. Not a single story. But then again, the majority of hunters don't, because I believe the Bigfoot are intelligent enough to know what a rifle or a bow can do, because they've seen hunters.
And I believe so. Yeah, and they know what it is. They know what that boomstick is.
Yep.
Yeah, and they know what man can do with it.
Yeah, and they know man can be irresponsible with it.
Now, before we go, I'm gonna talk about one more thing, and I heard a story about, we're talking the northwest, about a Bigfoot that got hit. So supposedly there was a trucker, and he hit a Bigfoot that was on the side of the road. It was crossing, and he hit it. While he pulled over, supposedly the Bigfoot stood there, right? And it was like crying out, because supposedly, from what I remember of the story, like the hips were done.
Right.
A semi hit it.
Yeah.
So they told that person, they called the state police. They told them, back up, give them room. And they went in and kind of treated the Bigfoot. But it makes me think, and they say that there were probably others waiting to scoop it up and take it. But the driver of the truck supposedly said Fish and Game and all these different departments came in from the state police, Fish and Game, and they like quarantined the area, and they treated it,
Yeah.
and took it away. So my thing is, knowing all this, knowing we have aggressive ones, we have pacifist ones, do we have one in captivity?
You know what? Now, some animals, wild animals, won't live in captivity very long. Now, they might be one of them. Now, I'm almost positive that they have had some in their custody. Now, do they have some that are alive today? I don't know.
I don't know. Have they studied them?
Just like when we went to this Jemez Springs at a Bigfoot convention, they talked about a native lady where they left the baby on the porch. Then she called the authorities, and they took the baby.
Right. That's right. She said she called, and all the black SUVs showed up, and they took it from her.
Yeah.
So that makes me think, do we have one in custody? Do we have one? And I shouldn't say custody, because it's not in jail.
Well, technically it is.
Technically it is. But does the government have one, or several, that they're looking at, studying, researching, and if they've died, dissecting? I'm sure. Now that I'm thinking, I've heard stories, but I don't know.
Yeah, well, that could be another podcast, because I've heard stories about how the government wanted at one time to capture one, because they want to figure out how they could just disappear when you're tracking them.
Right.
And they believe they may know some kind of cloaking device or something.
And they'd like to use it for military purposes.
Right, like everything.
Of course, I got it. Anyway, we hope you enjoyed tonight's show. Our focus was on the Big Thicket. If you ever researched it or heard about it, you decide, why are they so violent down there, so aggressive, when in other parts of the country they're elusive and want to be left alone?
Right. Yeah, and let us know. Let us know if you have any stories, especially from the Big Thicket.
Right.
Let us know. Maybe we could get you hooked up on the phone, or send us your story if you wouldn't mind us sharing it.
We'll read it, or we'll talk to you live. We'll figure it out. And you can do that by emailing us at latenightwithlarry55@gmail.com. That's one word, latenightwithlarry55@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.
Peace out.
Thank you.